Welcome to the clinical cookout.
You know you need it, it's kinda scary, but mental health is necessary. Four educated queens taking the lead, hold their hands and they'll help you succeed. Lay your head back, relax, just like that. Now listen to, learn, and your problems will burn away. Cookout, you know, we got just what you need. At the cookout, your heart and mind we will be. At the cookout.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. We are qualified clinicians who will cover various topics on mental health and will sometimes provide community resources. We are not being paid by any organization for our content, and any information we provide is general and pertains to our own personal experiences. We do not provide psychotherapy, diagnoses, or treatment recommendations on air. Any concerns related to your individual mental health should be directed to your medical and mental health professionals. We are not responsible for others' decisions or the subsequent consequences.
What's up, y'all? It's Auntie Keish here, and it's Social Worker Month. And the only auntie that's a social worker is me. So, enjoy the throwback episode of The Myths of Social Work, hosted by the aunties.
Welcome back to the Clinical Cookout. So today we're going to be talking about social work. And I honestly had a lot of questions to Auntie Keish because she is our social worker. One of my biggest questions, and it's not going to be the only question, but was, what do we do? What do social workers do when it comes to those hood complaints? You know, the complaints where BB called about CC because they don't think they're taking care of their kids right, or they share the same man and they don't like each other, so they're going to call CPS on each other. Like, what happens to those complaints?
No, not the same man though. Like what?
What? Shonda's saying that they calling up there like, please press 3 for hood complaints. Y'all got that category, Keish?
No. Really, Sean? I just need to know.
She don't.
I just cannot. You gotta give us some tea on some social work stuff, because if I want to know, other people want to know. I told y'all, if I can conceive it, other people already believe it.
Oh my God. Well, a lot of people, don't understand that process when it comes to calling CPS and trying to, complain. And according to Suge, have these hood complaints. What I want people to know is that every time you call, sometimes we already okay, here we go. But we still have to investigate regardless of how many times they call. Like we still have to count it as like, okay, this may be something serious. So we can't just be like, oh, well, this person is calling several times complaining about this person. We can't just be like, oh, well, it is what it is. They got their own beef. No, we have to treat it as it is like a real call coming in. So, however, what people don't know is that not every case that, comes in is substantiated, which means that not every case has enough evidence for us to, take it as a case, like open up the case. Not every call transitions to that. So even if it's a hood complaint, even if it's you beefing with so-and-so's baby daddy and all that, keep them to yourself. Call somebody else. Don't call us and won't. Don't do that, okay?
He said get somebody else to do it.
Right. Get somebody else to do it. Because we don't got nothing to do with what you doing with whoever else. And, unfortunately, people do try to weaponize the CPS, unfortunately.
Yes.
And it's and sometimes it's because somebody, like Suge said, you don't like somebody. That does not give you the reason to call CPS. If you don't like somebody, you don't like them. But don't call us, because people don't know that CPS, if it's substantiated and it's an open case and they determine that you've basically abused this child, it goes on your record. Like, people see that. Right. And people don't know that. Like, that's a serious matter. Child endangerment and those things are serious. So stop calling up here because you mad and so baby daddy.
I had
and mad and they're abusing them kids.
Be lying. I had I actually I didn't have to call CPS, but I did have to make a complaint for one of my, like, just working, you might have to make complaints. I've had to do it before. And it was very loosely investigated. And me being a professional, I was wondering why it was so loosely investigated. And they were just like, oh, there's not enough evidence. But, we're taught as mandatory reporters that if we see something, then we should say something. So I think I felt like kind of pushed to the side, actually, instead of like actually validated and maybe that's taking it personal. But I was just like, well, are they going to call? Are they going to check? And they just kind of did a loose little check and was like, they're fine.
Yeah. I believe that sometimes that can get a little bit I feel like very uncomfortable for certain people when it comes to mandated reporting. And I feel like that's where the problem comes in with who gets called on when it comes to professionals, because we can suspect child abuse, which is, if you even suspect, you're supposed to call. But some people don't consider cultural differences, and you have all these increased calls with a certain community, and it's like, no, this is a cultural thing. And that's how sometimes things get misconstrued. But you are supposed to call if there's a suspicion, not you investigating, a suspicion of abuse. Now, obviously, if somebody's coming out saying like, yeah, I punched my kid in the face, or yes, they are left unsupervised, and you have, and you see it, then yes, obviously call. But even if you suspect, you're supposed to call, because CPS workers are supposed to do the investigation. So yeah, and that's determined by whatever criteria that they have at that agency to determine whether they're going to open it or close it.
Now, see, that made me think when you talked about the cultural element of it, like certain cultural groups get these calls because somebody's not culturally competent enough to realize that's not really a problem. I thought about the fact that my mom, and like even parents nowadays, you'll hear somebody say, I knocked the black off of you. The wrong person hear that and they be like, oh my God, they're gonna hit the kid. And then they'll call. And it's like, this is a cultural saying. So it makes me wonder, do you, like, when it comes to the area of social work in particular, do you feel like social workers are truly culturally competent? Because they'll take a call like that and be like, oh, okay, we got to look into this. It's like, no, Black people's been saying that forever. They ain't gonna really knock nobody out.
Yes, they do. But
well,
okay.
Some of them will. Listen, I say stuff on the phone with Shug to these kids all the time. If she reported me every time, I'd be in jail. She know I ain't gonna do nothing.
I should probably report.
You know what?
Well, since this is the hot sauce, and we like the tea spicy, or we like the tea hot. The tea is that according to research, social work is basically also has a lot of racial, what should I say? A lot of racism intertwined with it as well. But because it's social work and we are supposed to basically work for all, technically social work is just another institution that has tied themselves to white supremacy. They don't talk about it, or they think they are not a part of that, but they are. And there's a lot of work that need to be done in the social work profession to untie themselves. So do I think that, now granted, does this mean all social workers are terrible? No, absolutely not. There are great social workers out there, but there are social workers who I'd be like, how did you even get into this? How you even get here? Like, who got you here? How did you get here? Just based off of some of their ideals and beliefs. But we know what our education is supposed to tell us and what we're supposed to do. But actually, somebody following through and not having those practices, well, it is what it is.
I had a social worker tell a client that I made the report on it. It's supposed to be anonymous, so y'all are not supposed to tell like who did the report or whatever. So the social worker, actually she was misinformed because I didn't make the call, but she ended up telling the client that I was working with that I was the one that made the call, and caused this whole entire like thing. And then like in the end was like, well, basically tried to tell me like she had to tell the client because part of the procedures is if this then they're allowed to tell. And so when you have one social worker tell you something like that, like as a clinician or a professional, then you start to believe like, oh, okay, well then it's not anonymous. You know what I mean? So like if every social worker is following the rules and the procedures and spreading the correct information, there won't be so much confusion about how things are done, or when should I report, when should I not report? Because that makes me feel like, well, I ain't about to report nothing like that if I don't want, I don't want my name going out there like I'm the one that did it.
The rule
If I
is,
report, I'm doing it. If I report, I'm standing 10 toes down on it. Because with clients, listen, don't do nothing reportable. That's
I get standing 10 toes down on it, but when I think about the fact that it's supposed to be anonymous and somebody, like, you don't know who you dealing with. You get somebody crazy and now they know you reported, and then you come out to your car and get knocked the hell out. Now what?
Yeah.
That's a safety issue.
The general rule is you are allowed to report anonymous. However, that does not mean you cannot give them your information. You can, but that information stays there. It should not be, well, I report now, unless that worker reported it themselves and said, in order for me to have transparency and a working relationship with this family, they tell on themselves and say, yes, let's make this call together. Or they say, I was the one who reported it because that's my job and that's my duty. That's different from you saying someone else reported it, because now he or she is putting you in danger, because now they don't broke confidentiality and damn near broke the law.
Yeah, because I was working in the hood at the time. So anything could have happened to me rolling through them hood streets, going into people's houses and stuff. But I was also a baby clinician at the time. Now, I actually, because of that experience, I shifted to my clients will always know if I make a report. Like, it is my duty, it is my job. So they know now. Even my teenagers, they gonna know when I gotta tell their parents about certain things. Parents are gonna know when I have to report it. So that just removes the anonymity out of it. But I only did that because of that experience, because I got scared. I'm like, yo, like, I'm in this family's home. This mom is pissed at me because she thinks I did this. And like, I was working with low income families. So it was very scary.
I mean, it could be intimidating. When I say I stand 10 toes down, I told them, I listen, this is reportable. And as my job as a clinician, I'm sorry, but I do have to report this.
That's in my paperwork. I go over that first session. I tell them all the exceptions to confidentiality and things that need to be mandated that I'm a mandated reporter, and things that I would have to report. So they know that. And I go back and go over it every now and then just so they remember this is something she will need to report. So you won't be surprised if it's a report.
But work like Auntie Amber said, working with lower income, and it's not that they're the only ones that that are violent, but it depends on who you get at the time. It can be a safety issue. And then like the functional family therapy and stuff, going to people's homes and actually working with them. The last thing you want to do is y'all remember that scene on Training Day where Alonzo Denzel was in that lady's home, Macy Gray house? Like, you don't want to be in their house when it's time for them to act up. So on that one, I might stand 2 toes down, 2 toes in.
Look, wait, did I say I didn't do that? I'm sorry, that wasn't me.
I want to say, while we clowning about the hood stuff, I want to make sure the audience knows that anybody can be reported. It don't matter what income you at. We've had to report on people who have higher level of income, who are doctors, who are nurses, who are professors, all of them. Like, don't think that just because your education or your occupation is going to shield you from being reported on. It's not.
Keish, I really want to talk about that in the main dish, because I have had a scenario where somebody in the upper echelons needed to be reported, and they weren't because people were worried about the loss of job or how that's going to look, and there was some racial undertones to that one. So with that being said, let's transition us to the main dish.
Okay, so for the main dish, we want to talk about, since it's Social Work Month, the realities of social work. So I wanted to start off by talking about, basically what we were talking about in the main dish and CPS reporting, like making false reports. A lot of people don't know that social workers who work in the child welfare system, some of them come straight out of college doing that. And I know somebody might push back on me, but I think it's the best way to enter into the field by going to the CPS route first. And it's only because it exposes you to a lot of families, a lot of things, and it makes you, it kind of like should be your foundation as a social worker. That's just my personal opinion. But the reality is, I was on LinkedIn, and there was basically a status that said that just because you have a master's degree in social work doesn't mean you're going to go out there and just all these jobs is going to fall into your lap. But as social workers, that's what we're told. We're told that if we just go to a specific school, mine specifically, I went to Case Western Reserve. I was told because it was a top 9 school in the country and it was this so prestigious that me putting out a resume, people were just going to hire me based off me going to a certain school. And, I ain't going to lie. For me at the time, it worked. But I don't know. They saying that doesn't work right now with social work. So the reality is you got to make connections. You got to go out there and network with people if you want to get into other areas of social work. But if you want to start off, child welfare is the first place you should be starting off.
Lord.
Listen, it's like, like hazing, like getting in a fraternity and a sorority. That's what child welfare is like. A hazing thing. I swear to God.
You got to get jumped in.
I swear to God, you will be faced with a lot of realities or a lot of realities of families. A lot of people get very, very, shocked how certain people, how families live. They're like, they don't have water. They have to go to the food bank. They need this. They have to do that. I'm like, yeah, these people make it work with the little bit that they got. That's
so. Do you?
So it means.
No, go ahead.
I was just. It means I'm not shocked by certain things. Like it wouldn't shock me to see 5, 6, 8 family members staying in one house in like a 2-bedroom place. It doesn't shock me when that happens. But people outside who can't even fathom that are like, oh, I can't believe that. I'm like, yeah, that's what they do. Like, if that's what they have to do to survive, yeah.
We gonna be coy and not say which people are shocked by this, because I feel like I know which group of people would be shocked by these revelations.
But no, because there's a lot of other people and like that just don't know. Like there, you get some new news that just don't know. They never had to experience that, so they can't fathom other people living like that.
Yep.
Is who gets the basis of the calls though? Is it black people? Why? What's the demographic of the phone calls? Because I feel like it's usually lower income or mostly black folks.
Well, I don't know. I don't have a statistic offhand as to who gets most of the calls. What I will say is that disproportionately more black kids are in the system. And that to me is because they did an actual study when I worked in child welfare. And for those who don't know, I worked in child welfare from 2012 to 2016. Um, and they did a study, and it came out that disproportionately black kids are in care than any other group. So if we were to say the calls, I'm assuming there would be more, it would be correlated to more calls on them coming in. Again, I don't have the research in front of me. But when I was there from 2012 to 2016, that was the consensus. That was the outcome. Now I haven't been there since then, so that may have changed. But when I was there, that was what the numbers were.
And I wonder if that's not so much as like black kids or black people get more of the calls, but more of like it's ultimately the social worker's decision on whether to move forward or not with an investigation or what the outcome is going to be or whatever. So if there's a racial factor there or just like a negative perspective already about low income and or black families, then those families will be the ones that you would move forward with with some of these investigations versus other families or just minorities in general, I would say. So I wonder
Yeah.
if that's also a factor in that
Yeah.
as well.
I mean, when you think about, I thought about this like a couple minutes ago as far as like where children's services is placed. Like, where's the building at? And the last two that I worked at are placed in lower income areas. They're not placed over in the areas where it is mostly predominantly the majority or in high income areas. That's not where children's services is placed.
Mm.
So I think about, you know, them being targeted more because look at where they're placed as well too. They're placed in those areas. Now, I
I
will
mean,
say this. Go ahead, Shil.
I was about to say, I'm sure that there's a lot of targeting, but I think with lower income, there comes a lot of other factors too, like frustration. Lack of resources can cause frustration. One single parent homes cause you to have to work more to make the sometimes a minimal amount of money, which means you have to leave your kids at home more unsupervised or supervised by older kids, which causes more accidents, more problems in the home, just more socio emotional problems in people. So I know that is obviously disproportionate, but I th- this is a macro thing.
It is. That's why I love being a macro social worker because I look at how the systems affect um, the way these families live. And I'm a very, 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 I'm going to say 10 toes down on this, Shug, that people make decisions. People can only make better decisions based on the system that they're in. And if the system is literally used against you because you're poor or because you're in poverty or because you don't have certain things, then you're always going to be a cycle in that system. You're always going
Yeah.
to be cycling through. And I feel like the system needs to be better in order to improve families. That's how this works. There's an interrelationship going on. So
I wanted to point out something just because Auntie Shugs mentioned, single parent homes and those being thought to be in certain areas a higher like rate. I recently actually looked at some statistics from I believe it was the CDC. I'm gonna look again because I saved it.
It
And
was Google.
currently the current census, Black people no longer fulfill the highest single parent home. We're not at the top. We're not at the top. It's actually Hispanic, then white, then Black. So there are more Hispanic single family homes than white single family homes than us. So we're no longer up there like, oh, it's more Black single mothers than any. No, it's not.
yeah. Well, I'll be wondering if those numbers correlate to the amount of calls being brought
Right.
in with Black and minority communities and groups. I'll be curious if that has changed. I would hope so, but again, when I was there 7 years ago, it was mostly us in there. Um, and it's hard. It's hard to see that because as a worker, you like, okay, I want these kids to be safe. And as a Black person, you're like, I don't want them here. I don't want them here. Can we,
Mhm.
how can we figure this out without including a system that's going to tear them apart? I remember, and I'll never forget y'all. I remember I had to go to a school where there were two little Black boys, and they got brought down to like the conference room at school, and it was me, another social worker, a principal, a teacher. Remind you, the parent is not in there. It's just these two little Black boys and us. And we had to sit down and tell this child, both of them, that they were not going home. And the way the oldest little boy's eyes started to weld up, I had to get up and walk out. I had to get up out of the room and walk out because I had never felt hurt like that in my life. And it's a real reality for people. It's a real reality for Black families. And to be
Right.
there, being a Black worker, and have to tell this Black child that he's not going to go home to his mom, who by the way had a physical disability, by the way, I it was hard. And I remember that was the first time I had broken down and they were trying to tell me like, okay, maybe Keisha needs more training. That was the solution to me being upset, was Keisha needs more training, basically to adjust to these type of situations. No, I
So
don't
you
need.
needed more training to not be human, pretty much. I need more training to learn
I
how to be a
remember.
robot.
I
My
remember
thing is,
suggestion. I was like, no, I'm a human being, and I watched somebody who looked like me not being able to go home to the only person that they knew. Now I'm
yeah,
not saying that there was no issue at the time. We could have handled that a different way. Which, by the way, they were placed back at home. They were placed back at home. But the traumatic, like telling you that that's like telling my nephew he's never going to see me or my sister, like at 5. What? Like, no,
yeah.
that's crazy. I just feel like there's other ways social work can improve, and that was one of the cases that I thought showed me where we are lacking.
Well, there's also like the thing that bothers me is that you get some households where it's like the mom has a disability or dad has a disability, so they're physically incapable of taking care of the kid the way that they need to, right? Even if they have help. But then I don't know if you guys ever remember it, and it's a public case. It was on like Netflix, like Gabriel Fernandez, where they
Mm.
had teachers report, counselors report, family members report. They had so many people who make reports, and then these kids are consistently placed back in that household until they're killed. The reason why I became a counselor, one of the biggest reasons why, it's usually a long journey, but I was 9, and then there was this little girl named Elisa Izquierdo in New York City, and she was killed. And I read, like, her face was on the front of Time magazine. She was just like a captivating, beautiful little girl. And so when I would read the article, and I mean, they were mopping the floor with her hair and just doing like the most to the kid. And they finally, blunt force trauma finally took her out. But it's like they kept placing the child back into the home, because they kept on wanting to give the mother the benefit of the doubt. And she thought the kid had a demon in her. She just was not there for that. And so I'm like, you get the kids who get taken out of good homes, or at least homes that will be fine for them, and then you get the ones that's consistently put back into homes like that.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
that's one of the flaws of the social work system that I've noticed. And I know we're talking a lot about flaws. There are some great things about the social work system, so I don't want to make it seem like we're only talking about the negative things. But one of the things that I have seen is like the perpetuation of that abusive cycle by placing kids somewhere because you don't have anywhere else to put them, or because you're overwhelmed as a social worker, you have a huge caseload and you need to put these kids somewhere. And it's part of your job. Like, I don't know if y'all have quotas or you have to, you know, get this many kids into a home by this date or whatever. But I've seen that a lot where kids are placed even into foster homes where they're being abused, and they're telling people that they're being abused and it's being reported, and they remain there because why? They don't have anywhere else to go, or they can't find another placement. And that just continues with that cycle.
Right.
Yep. That is a part of the issues with the system, is placing children in back into the homes that we continuously see that are abusive, and even with foster homes that are probably not the best place for children. And it may be because I've heard we don't have enough foster placements. We don't have enough people to take them on. And we don't, and I don't know if that's, I know that when it comes to like adoption and foster home, they have to go through trainings. They have to continue to like go to these meetings. They have to continue to like learn how to address some of these issues that or challenges that these foster children would have. But for some reason, there's something in the system that's not, it's not meshing. It's not connecting.
But Keith, don't they pay? Like, don't they pay for people to take kids? Like, don't they give a monthly stipend?
There is some type of reimbursement or some type of incentive to help out with caring for a child through the state. Yep. And some
Let's
people
see.
get into foster care for the wrong reasons.
That's
The
what I was
wrong
just about to say. How many people get into the system and go through all the paperwork and get a clean passing application, but they only want to do it to bring in that money. They're not really caring for these kids.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. There are great foster parents that I know. I've ran across a lot of them who really care about the well-being of a child, and they really care for children. Yes. But there are those who also get them for checks because they get helped. But I've
Is
seen both sides. Let's just say that.
earlier you said that there are more Black children in the system, but is it harder for Black parents or families to become foster parents? Is there an equal amount of Black foster families to bring in those Black children, or are a lot of these Black children going to white foster families?
Probably not. I would probably say it's probably not a lot of Black foster parents. I'm going to guess. Now, granted, that might have changed since I've left foster the child welfare system, but I'm going to guess there's not as many as whites. And when it comes to placement, we look for the first available home, not the home that's going to match cultural backgrounds. We look for the first available, not for the. Let me repeat that again. Not for cultural matching. That's not how that goes. That's not how that goes. So let's just say one of y'all are foster parents. Okay, if there's a Black baby who needs to be placed and y'all's houses are full, well, guess where? That baby is going to the next one that may be open. And maybe there are some foster placements that are specialized in like medically fragile children and things of that nature, or who only want to take teenagers. Now they may classify it like that, but we go for who is available at the time to take this child.
So why is it that you can? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I had a friend, my white friend. She said, because I told her, I was like, it is annoying, and it's gonna open up a whole other can of worms. But I was like, it is annoying that sometimes you get the kids where they don't know themselves culturally, and they have all these problems. And certain white people, unless they're culturally competent, they don't understand, because it's kind of like that's not what they have to deal with, and they just think, well, I could bring this kid into our home, and I don't see color. And I said, well, there's a lot of that, and that can be detrimental to a child. And she said, well, I understand that Black people sometimes don't want the kids placed into only white homes. She said, but then why don't more Black people step up? I was like, okay, sis. I mean, you're right. So she got me thinking about stepping up.
So I would say to that, sometimes now depending on what county you're in, sometimes relatives are also able, which we call kinship caregivers as well. So sometimes having a relative could be also useful instead of taking the child into foster care. So even if there is, let's just say, the child doesn't need to go into a white foster home, the agency also has the due diligence to find a family member as well. But they also take those family members through those same type of like criteria as to placing that child in a home. So even if there's a family member available, if they don't meet the criteria that the agency wants them to meet, they get ruled out. So there may be an availability to family members, because African American and other minority cultures are very collectivistic. So it's 9 times out of 10 we try to take them in first. Like, oh no, I don't want my baby to go, whoever to go into the system. However, if they don't meet the agency standards or whatever the agency is asking them to do or have, then they go to foster care.
And see, that makes me think: is there a discrepancy or some form of like discrimination? Is it harder? Because like I know for a fact there's been a lot of research done with adoption that it's made harder for Black families to adopt a baby. So with foster care, is it made harder for them to pass that criteria? Like maybe they do meet it, but somebody feel a kind of way and feel like, no, maybe they'll be better with these white parents. Maybe it'll be better for them. So I wonder if that comes into play when they're placing these children.
So I can't speak to what I mean, obviously I'm not in the head of some of these foster care placement people, so I can't say that they do that. But I will say, like, if like just say like oh gosh, maybe a cousin wants to be able to take them in and like everything's in place, they'll say, well, this person, they only make, how are they supposed to pay for them to get this, or how are they supposed to take them to school if they have no car, or how, like, they'll start asking those type of questions, and sometimes that rules them out. Now that doesn't mean that something's wrong with the cousin, that doesn't mean like something mentally is going on or they're doing drugs. It just means that they are also having limited resources. So then that just rules them out on getting the child placed with them, which sucks. And that I really, really hate, because I'm like, but this person knows this kid. Like they would do better going, into their home. But again, it depends on what the agency is looking for, and what the criteria that the family meets.
And I think that makes perfect sense. Because if you are trying to place a child, the last thing you want to do is hear there's 12 million barriers in the way to a child that needs help right now, because then you could be placing them in a situation where there's more trauma and more harm being done, instead of them actually making it easier. Because sometimes people get abused because you made it harder on them. They don't necessarily not like the child, but the circumstances make people vulnerable in that area.
I want to kind of switch gears for a minute, because we've been talking a lot about, child services, and Auntie Keish said that for her, she thinks every social worker out of college, that should be their first go round. You getting hazed in, you got to get jumped in. But after that, or outside of child services, because I think that's what so many people think social work is. It's just working with children being placed in foster care and stuff. What other areas or what other jobs can a social worker do?
So when it comes to social work, I just want to let everybody know, even the audience, a social worker can be placed anywhere, and that is because how marketable and transferable our skills are. After I was in child welfare, I was a medical social worker. So I worked a lot with a bunch of doctors and nurses. I also worked in a nursing home, not as a social worker, but there was a social worker there. I've worked, or not I, but other people work in different type of community mental health clinics. Social workers do private practice. Social workers work in government. As you know, if you don't know, Marsha, I think is her last name Fudge? Is she over the housing and development in the Biden administration? She's a social worker. Um, Social workers can work anywhere, literally anywhere. I just said starting off with child welfare because child welfare has you connected to the legal system as well. So social workers also work in courts. They work in jails. They work everywhere, anywhere you can think of a social worker being, they are there. They are there all over. So yeah, we can do anything pretty much.
All right, so yeah, like I said, maybe I went the wrong way. Social workers can do everything, but also there are, just like we talked about with our hot sauce. Auntie Suge saying the hood calls, the hood complaints. Like there are these thoughts about social work that leads to stereotyping and myths about social work. So I have a list of myths that I pulled up that I want Auntie Keish to pretty much tell us: is this myth true or false, real or fake?
And you gonna put her on the spot like that?
And just remember, I'm not speaking for all social workers. This is just my perspective.
Right. Don't be coming at Auntie Keish. We will come for you if you do. Myth number 1. Social workers take children away from their families.
Take?
You want me to answer that one?
Okay, working child welfare, we do not take, we investigate to see if a child is being harmed in any way. And if so, we file through the courts to have them being removed from their families.
And I want to add to this: if you are doing something that is causing a child harm, then you took your child away from your family. The social worker was just put in place to make sure that that child was kept safe. That's all.
All right now.
All right.
All right. All right. Myth number 2. Social workers aren't paid well. Y'all broke in these streets.
That is 100% true. Like no, actually not 100. It's 1,000% true.
You know, for real? No lie.
Like the type, like, you know, the stuff we got to do and the amount of paperwork. The reason why, okay, I'm not going to get into all that, but the amount of things that a social worker has to do when it comes to any job that we do is a lot, and we're very underpaid. Very.
Okay. They got that listed as a myth, like it ain't true. Keith said, no, It's true.
You better check them numbers. You better check them numbers because according to every social worker I follow on Twitter, it is we are not paid, we are not compensated properly.
Yeah. All right. Myth number 3. There is no career progression in social work.
That's a myth. That's a myth. Because there's different license that you can have. So you can have like me, I just have a regular LSW license, but then you can have a clinical license, what allows you to practice independently. Social workers can be at all levels of jobs as well. So you can start off as a regular social worker, not a regular, but a basic entry level social worker, but you can also be an administrator. You can be a director. There are some social workers who are CEOs that run nonprofit organizations. So there's definitely progression for you in the field.
All right, all right. I'm gonna just do 2 more because this list I didn't realize it's that long, but it's one that I really want to ask. Um, all social workers are women.
That's false. Not all social worker are women. And actually, while it may be a small number, there are men in the social work field, and we need more of them. So if you're a man watching the show, we need more men in social work, and we need more Black men in social work.
Hey, shout out to my cousin Gerard, who lives in he works in Baltimore, the Baltimore school system. He's a social worker, Black male social worker. And he loves it. He loves it. He works with the I think 4th grade children right now, which is dope.
That's
Um,
my cousin too, y'all.
oh yeah, it is right. That's not your sugar cousin too. So 2 more. The next myth. I will be on my own in some very tough situations. So like there's not a lot of support. You're on your own.
I wish I could say that that was a myth, but sometimes it is true depending on what agency you in. It depends on your leadership. So there are moments where I think I was alone in handling, let's just say, racism when I worked in a rural area. I felt like my supervisors were not equipped to handle that at the time. So, but I moved on to a different agency who is able to handle that. So it depends on what agency you are in.
Myth, or is it? I will have to leave my feelings at home.
I would say that is um, a myth because there's still a human connection because they you have to build a relationship with family in order for them to trust you, and sometimes that's going to take you being human and not necessarily crying and falling out, but it's a way to empathize that the family may be scared, the child may be scared. So there's going to be some feeling and emotion involved. And unfortunately, this is what we are always told. If you don't have no feelings when it comes to addressing these situations, then you don't need to be in the field of social work. That's just it. You don't need to be here if that's if that's how you're approaching these families, because that means you are trying to, you know, basically be this cold person going into a situation that's high intensity. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stop being professional. What it means is that you can see them as human and also empathize with them. So that's what I would say. That's a myth.
Thank you,
All right,
Keish.
good job, Keith. How'd she do? What's her score?
It wasn't. It
I
wasn't.
think she did a 5. You only a 5.
I think so too.
Yeah, just a 5 out of 10. But if you could
Five.
tell me the answer to this question, then maybe you might move
Oh.
up to 10. How does one, and is it even fruitful for somebody to become a foster parent, or who should be foster parents? Because I do know some people who want to be foster parents, like I guess to like streamline it a little bit more, like what will make a good foster parent, what should point people in the direction of foster parent, and how do they even do that? Like, how do you become one?
Yeah. So I didn't work in the foster care unit. So I want everybody to know there's different units in child welfare. So there's like your intake unit that where you have all the people who go out investigate. There's the protective unit or ongoing unit where those are kids who've been in custody for more than a year and maybe on their way to adoption, or they're trying to work their treatment plan both through the courts and child services to get the child back to reunify. That's what we call it. And then there's kinship and foster care units where we have individuals who would like to be foster care parents. And so what I would suggest is contacting your local child welfare service or agency to talk about that process with their coordinator or with the supervisor or even with the worker. Somebody can direct you onto how to get the application process going for that. Now, I can't say that we all can determine what's a good foster parent because I know that that's different for different people. What I can say is that if you are open to understanding a child who, and even a family who has gone through life changes or things that have impacted them, and you are willing to be a person to help with increasing their quality of life, then I think that you are able to become a foster parent. We need to figure out what you're contributing versus what you're taking away. And if that could just be, being with a child for X amount of weeks until mom gets into her rehab program or dad gets into their rehab program. That could be you being able to even be in their life long term. Who knows? For 2 years until mom and dad are able to, you know, uh, complete their treatment plan through the courts or and through child services because you'll have a treatment plan for both, by the way, to complete. So if you are willing to improve the quality of life for this child or for this family, then I say go for it. Doesn't matter your color. We do need more Black foster parents. I will say that. Um, and
Well, my
if you
friend
are,
did challenge me. So I have
yeah,
5 kids. Can I be a foster mother?
absolutely, absolutely, you can be a foster parent if you have more than one child in your house or 4 or 5.
Can you be a foster parent if you are military affiliated though? Because I was told you couldn't.
I do not know that answer.
Ah.
And I'm willing, and also I'm willing to say that I don't know certain answers. And that is an answer I don't know. I don't know. I haven't
Well,
talked to any military foster parent.
I want to bump you up to a 20 real quick. All right. So you at 10, you got 10 points. I'm gonna bump you to a 20. How as a social worker, because the picture that I get is that you kind of you're like in the middle, right? You've got
Mhm.
someone to answer to. You're part of the system. Actually,
Yep.
you're in a
Mhm.
triad right now. You're part of the system. You've got your supervisor, whoever you have to answer to, and then you
Yep.
also have the family or whoever you're working with, providing the service.
Yep.
How do you keep yourself from burning out trying to help everyone meet their needs, trying to fit in with the system, meet your boss's needs, meet your client's needs? Like, how do you keep yourself from just becoming exhausted and just kind of falling out and being done? Like, I'm done.
Well, that is a very, very good question. And I want to circle it back around to child welfare. And the reason why I said that all social workers should at least do it for a year is because it gives you an eye open, or it opens the door into looking at what it's like to be burnt out as a social worker. Because there's so many things you have to do when you are in child welfare and just social work in general. So that's why it's important to be able to move around in social work, not staying in child welfare unless you want to. You can stay in child welfare as long as you want to, because it's a government job. But I would say that's why the system needs to change for social work because they don't necessarily have something that we use to reduce that burnout. They need to change the system. So unfortunately, I'll be very honest that the way I kept saying was to leave. I
All
had to
right.
leave.
Last question, I think, unless Auntie Sugar and Auntie Amber got another one. So being that a social worker can do so many things, like you can work in
Mhm.
child services, you can have a private practice doing therapy sessions with people, you can do all sorts of things. Is it difficult can you conflate the different skills? Like, for example, if you are working in child services and you're working with reports, like people calling in reports, can you step into your therapist shoes and give this family therapy? Like, can you conflate it, or is it to be kept separate and you have to keep those mindsets separate?
That's a good question. Child welfare workers are investigators. They investigate abuse and neglect. That's their job. Their job is not to be therapists. So we refer out to other companies or other places, agencies like, let's just say, a private practice or another community mental health agency who is able to provide those therapeutic services. We are not in that realm, in child welfare, we are not therapists. Now, that does not mean we cannot use some therapeutic things to help with building the relationship. But as far as therapy, like what we do, like now in our professions, we don't do that in child welfare. But again, that's why you go into private practice or you go to community mental health centers. You don't do that in child welfare because that's not our goal. Our goal in child welfare is reunification and with the children and the family, and investigate abuse and neglect. That's the role of child welfare.
Well, that was helpful. Thank you to our favorite social worker, Auntie Keish. Happy Social Worker Month to you too.
Happy
She
Social
ended
Worker
with
Month.
100 points. She ended with 100 points.
She
she
got
did.
it. She got it.
And I just finished all my clinical hours to get my independent license. So hopefully I'll be taking that test by the end of the year. Not right now, but by the end of the year. So
Oh my goodness!
Go,
Congratulations.
Keish.
Congratulations.
We love a level up. We love a good level up on the
Right.
clinical cookout.
Listen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, see y'all later.